let's put it on a more North American. I started to go into a story that I read about this terrible story about a bunch of women and children that were hacked to death in a church where they took refuge in Uganda earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know how many victims there were because there were so many pieces. You know, and I thought, gosh, wouldn't it have been nice if somebody in that crowd had a gun? You know, just one person. Because all of a sudden that would have put those mothers on equal footing with the thugs who, by the way, were never caught. They don't know if it was the army or the rebels, you know? It puts your grandmother who's crippled up in a wheelchair on the same footing as the three thugs who are trying to steal her Social Security check. It is an equalizer.
Suzanna, can I ask you that if you were to take a look at some of the shootings, and I think of things like Virginia Tech, et cetera, because I think the young man there in question had actually gone out and got his application, got his gun, et cetera. But, you know, I'm sure that I'm just about positive that the people that he shot, I don't think any of them had a gun, right? You would still...
No, and if I could just interject, while I was in the legislature here for a dozen years, and while I was in the legislature, I kept pushing a bill that would allow people, now that we have concealed carry here in Texas, it would have allowed people to carry on campus and on university campuses. And the reason I wanted that is for this very reason. And all I could do when that awful Virginia Tech thing happened was sit back and say, I told you so. Because that guy was looking for a place to get a high body bag count. He never would have gone to the university except for the fact that he knew that they couldn't carry there.
Susanna, do you carry now?
Absolutely. You betcha.
You betcha.
Now, I don't carry 100% of the time. And, I try not to live my life as a paranoid woman.
Or vigilante.
Yeah, but the fact is, look, I have kids now, and let me put it to you this way. I know that the police cannot protect me. They cannot protect my children in the majority of cases. So, God forbid, if something ever happens again, it's up to me or it's up to my husband. And a gun is not a guarantee. I'm not silly enough to believe that. But it changes the odds.
Susanna, I got to take a break, but when I come back, I want to ask you about, well, what happens when we all have guns and we're all goofs? So instead of pointing your finger at some guy, you go, well, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. How does that work, especially, say, in the great state of Texas? I'll get you to hold for one moment. We're talking with Suzanna Hupp. She actually has a book out about all this, From Lubies to the Legislature. Yeah. And it's, when you take a look at it, you go, oh, my gracious, right? Oh, my gracious. If you have any questions, let me know. 4960063, it's Primo on 630 CHED.
You're listening to the Leslie Primeau Show on 630 CHED.
Is my guest. We're taking a look at so many things. In 1991, her life changed drastically. Her parents were gunned down together with 20-some other people in just an ordinary little restaurant in an ordinary little town in Texas. And it makes you kind of wonder. Now, Susanna had a gun, but because they have a you can't conceal it law in Texas, it's in her car, right? So let me tell you, my guess is that you'd really want that gun on that day. And I bet you're sorry you didn't have it. She's written a book, From Lubies to the Legislature, One Woman's Fight Against Gun Control. And when you think about it, there is a fear. And Susanna, my fear, of course, is that lunatics will also get guns. And, all of a sudden, instead of the knife attacks we hear in Edmonton, and we hear a number of them, they'll have guns. And it might not be, it's pretty hard to get an en masse group of people killed with a knife, but you could with a gun.
Sure. Okay, well, let me ask you this, and it's kind of a simplistic question, but I'm genuine with it. Do you think a lunatic could get a gun right now?
Oh, you betcha.
Okay, and would you agree that all of the mass shootings that we have seen, that at least certainly all the ones that I can think of, have occurred in places where there were laws against it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even like...
So my contention is that the only thing the gun control laws do is prevent the good guys, because we're the only ones that pay attention to the laws. It prevents the good guys from being able to protect themselves and their families.
Right.
A gun is a hunk of metal. It's a tool, and it's a dangerous tool, I grant you, like a chainsaw. But it's a tool. It's a tool that can be used to harm a family. It's a tool that can be used to injure a family. The arguments that I heard from you, I've heard a million times, and the fact is that, and I don't want to get into statistics because I know we'll put your listeners to sleep, but I'm just going to say this one time. Statistically, the argument doesn't bear out, because every single place that we have passed carry laws, either concealed or open carry, the violent crime, in other words, crime of person on person, whether that's a robbery or a rape or a murder, violent crime goes down. So, we've heard all the scare things about, oh, my God, it's going to be Dodge City. People are going to be, somebody's going to have an accident or bump into somebody on the road, or it's going to be a traffic, and people are going to whoop out their guns. Instead of just yelling at each other, they're going to whoop out their guns. It doesn't happen. And we've got concealed carry in all but a couple of states. And we've managed to do that over the last 15 years. And
does it change?
It doesn't happen.
Susanna, does the other thing change? The other part that you worry about, right, is that, the guy breaking into my house tonight doesn't know if probably feels fairly confident thinking I don't have a gun. So the worst that can happen is I get him with my bat or my dog, and he should worry about the dog more than the bat. But,
amen.
But if you were to go into a house in Texas, you really got to worry that a guy's got a gun, because he probably does.
You're darn right. You're darn right. And let me make it very clear to all of you listeners, you're absolutely right. Any of your listeners who are thinking about breaking into my house, they're going to die.
See, now that brings up the other issue. Like, in our country, we've gotten so politically correct that if you break into my house and my dog does get you, and my dog bites your kneecap off or aims higher, I'm going to get sued, right?
It's really justice run amok. Here's the way I look at it, and my views have changed a little bit since I've had children. Do you mind if I ask, do you have children?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There have been incidences. In fact, there was one, I can't recall if it was in Canada or Great Britain, but this older man lived in a high-crime neighborhood. He had been broken into several times. Finally, he got a gun, and he was broken into in the middle of the night, and he shot and killed what turned out to be a 13-year-old.
Oh.
Now, the 13-year-old, to his credit, I guess you could say, was 6 foot tall. It was hard to know he was 13. And the mama was on the television screen saying, oh, my baby, he killed my baby. And he had gotten in with the wrong crowd and just was looking for drug money and was just there to steal the TV.
Uh-huh.
Okay? All right. Now, my contention is this, especially now that I have children. If I wake up in the middle of the night, now I've got a couple of good dogs too, but we're out kind of in the middle of nowhere. If I wake up in the middle of the night and there's somebody in my house that isn't supposed to be here, I am not going to turn on the light and say, how old are you? Are you here just to take my TV to support a drug habit, or are you here to rape and murder and brutalize my children? I'm not going to take that risk. I'm going to pull the trigger. If I turn on the light and it was a tall 13-year-old, I'm going to lose a night of sleep. But I can tell you I would lose far less sleep had it been somebody there that would harm my children. That person takes a huge risk when they walk into a house, when they are somewhere that they are not supposed to be.
Okay. Now, Suzanna, I got to take a break here for the news, but when we come back, let's discuss the other question that always comes back. What if, by accident, you wake up in the middle of the night, you hear somebody moving around, you grab out the 6-shooter or the Glock or whatever you're allowed to own, and the person you aim at, you don't really see clearly, turns out to be your child? That's the next question that always comes up. Suzanna Hupp is my guest. We're talking about guns. She wrote a book called From Movies to the Legislature, One Woman's Fight Against Gun Control. I haven't seen the book. I would take a look at the book, because more and more as we discuss violence, not only in our city but in our country, it starts to make you wonder a little more, doesn't it? I know I've begun to wonder. And I don't know where I'm going with that wonder. Do you know where you're going? It's Primeau on 630 CHED.
Leslie admits she can be pushy, loud, and obnoxious. And that's when she's having a good day. You're listening to the Leslie Primeau Show on 630 CHED.
Pushy, loud, and obnoxious? Yeah, I guess that would be me. Susanna Hupp is my guest, and I'm talking about gun control. She has a book about her fight against gun control because her contention is if you can't protect yourself, who's going to? And police are not usually there as quick as you'd like, and even they're not there at the instant. So there's a lot of things that are happening these days, and frankly, I think we have to look at it in Canada. I'm not sure that I'm going to relinquish my position on gun control yet, but I'm certainly looking at it. But one of the things, Susanna, and that's the other thing, right? First of all, I would absolutely go